It's the Friday show. Ooh, Graphfit friends.
Okay, welcome back to episode 4 of the Friday show. Happy Friday. We've got the beers. Hope you've got a beer as well. If you're watching, then you would have seen Close to the Bull, and Liam has to do a forfeit at the end, so stick around for the forfeit at the end.
Fast forward to the last few minutes and you'll probably see it.
Yeah, just maybe like on like 2 times speed, so we still get like the full episode play on Spotify. Obviously if you're listening, you won't have got that, but if you can have a quick look, then look at the video because it'll be quite funny. And make sure you tune into the other episodes as well. This is something that we're refining over time, but the particular topic that we're going to be going into today with Sam and Ryan, if you can't see us, is basically short and long form content, the pros and cons of each, different scenarios where short form or long form would be better, and then a bit of an anatomy, so a bit of a breakdown of if you are going to do short or long form, so sort of some key pointers of what the structure of that should look like. Even though short form content and long form content are quite buzzwords now, aren't they? And they get used a lot. You'd be surprised how many people don't really understand what it actually means. It's like, a couple of other buzzwords like lead gen and pipelines and this stuff. So we just want to break it down, really simple. We do have Ryan, again, if you can't see us. Ryan, if you haven't tuned into any of the other, oh my God, start again. If you haven't tuned into any of the other episodes, then you won't know that Ryan is our latest addition to the team, purely based on content. And he basically, within the couple of weeks that you've been here, he's already doing all of the workload of short and long form content.
Yes.
So podcasts, reels, TikToks, everything in between. Ryan's the editor for them. So that's why we've got him on the show. And we also have Sam, because Sam doesn't actually do any editing for us anymore.
No.
We have in the past.
Yeah.
But
He'd probably tell his story about his the viral video he made one time.
We'll get
to that one.
If Simon Johnson's watching, it was one of his was it TikTok?
One of his TikToks, about 10 million views.
10 million views.
It was purely down to Sam's editing skills.
No. Come on, we'll give Simon the credit for that. But yeah, I reckon I took about 30% responsibility for that. So
30%.
3 million views.
Just not 30% of the money, unfortunately.
yeah.
So that's your goal, Ryan. 10 million views.
10 mil.
Yeah. We'll let you accumulate them.
Yeah, sound.
Just for us though.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason why we've got Sam on as well is obviously, as again, if you can see us, you'll know that me and Liam are slightly older.
I have had the shave though. Mid-shaving, so I do look a bit younger today, but I am still.
We are slightly older than Ryan and Sam. So to be honest, we want to get that fresh perspective on particularly short form content, I think, for the younger generations, and what they would essentially advise as 19, 20-year-olds who consume a lot of TikTok and a lot of short form content and have probably a lot of a shorter attention span than the older people do.
Just a bit, yeah.
and what makes them stick around for short form content, I think that'd be quite interesting, because even though you obviously have your target audiences, so if you're a gym owner, a coach, a PT that you're listening to this, you obviously have your target audience that I think you're aiming for, which will be of a certain age maybe, or a certain age gap, but your content is still floating around on the internet somewhere, whether it is TikTok, whether it is YouTube Shorts, whether it is on Instagram. And you need to be ticking these boxes, whether you're aiming at the older category or the young category. So that's what we're going to do. First of all, just really quick, we've had some feedback, haven't we?
Yeah.
That we chat too much shit at the start. So we're gonna try and get straight into it. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna have Sam just for the laugh of it to introduce Ryan.
He's gonna really briefly intro.
No.
Yeah.
Try not to go on for too long.
So I'm gonna count you down.
Okay, go for it.
3, 2, 1.
Right, so obviously, as Cal mentioned, there's a new member on the podcast today, and that's Ryan. Ryan started about a month ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
And he fits in well. I mean, also considering me and him apparently look very similar, so
I don't see it,
I don't see it personally, but it's all we hear off everyone in the office, innit? So
both just young and way.
Both just young and just look the same. Well, he had a much better mullet than me, didn't he? Until he shaved it off.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace to his mullet and my short-lived one. But let's stop waffling. So yeah, he came on doing video, haven't you? And obviously already you've took, as Carl said, took the workload off Jay and Joe, and adapted to it really well. His quality of work's great as well, and he churning so much content out, which is found a balance between it, haven't we? Which is really good.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a funny lad, loves his footy, so you can't really go wrong, can you?
Yeah.
That's quite nice, though, isn't it?
Bits
No,
in,
that's
really
not
well.
nice.
I have an opinion on that. What do you think about that?
I'd say into me footy, yeah, top of the league.
Top of the league in the
You know.
fantasy as well, let's bear in mind, yeah.
But as for content goes, yeah, just going all through it, short form, long form. It's been a big change up from what I've been doing differently in like other jobs and stuff. So it's been pretty nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll get stuck straight into it. We usually do highlights at this point, but we're going to skip that. And go. We maybe add it at the end if we've got time. But, so first of all, I guess the biggest topic to cover really for all of us is the difference between short form and long form content and what they are to begin with if you're not aware, and then we'll sort of break them down individually. So from our perspective, there's a big difference in short and long form content, and you probably should be doing both. Let's just sort of set the precedent there. We do believe that you should be doing long and short form content, but just to give you a few ideas, something like long form content will be something like, let's say, a podcast. Which we'll go into that in a sec because I think there's a different spin on that we can give. But something like a podcast, something like a YouTube video, a vlog, something that is probably over 5 to 10 minutes, and usually has an agenda. So there'll be some value in it, there'll be some personality in it, there'll be some, if you're a business, some culture related stuff in it. And essentially you can then use that longer video to then cut down for shorter form, which is the benefit. Again, we'll get onto that a little bit later on. But that would be like a long form piece of content. A short form piece of content would obviously be, as obvious, the opposite of that. So you've got, who just waved that?
Jay Smith,
Hi Jay. We've obviously got the opposite of that. So short form content would be something like an Instagram reel, a YouTube short, a TikTok, something like that. Which it obviously has a different aim. So if you're looking at doing long form content, you're probably looking to maybe build a relationship. That might be an aim, to build relationships over time. It's probably a little bit of a slower burner because
it's a long game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a long game, hence long form content. But the benefit of long form content is, albeit it does take longer to build relationships, is that it's on the internet for a much longer period of time. If it's on something like YouTube or something like that, or a podcast, it's your intellectual property, it's your content that's going to be there for a long time, as long as you are straight to the point with your value and I guess you stick to authentically, you and your brand, then it can be a really, really good long-term asset to have on the internet. But on the flip side of it, when you've got short form content, you can almost get some quicker wins. So obviously if you're on Instagram or it's a reel or it's a TikTok or something, to be able to get an immediate singular point across straight away can be quite effective from a sales perspective for lead gen and things like that. So that's essentially a quick breakdown of why you would use them, what they are, but obviously we'll go into more detail. Hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have enough information and enough inspiration to then decide which avenue you're best going down. Like I said at the start, I do think a combination of both is the best, as optimally. But if you're not creating that much content to begin with, then what you can start with, long or short, and how it should work, and if it suits your audience. That's the main thing for me. But what about yourself, Ryan?
I think consuming, I'll probably say longer. I think if you get value from what you're watching, it's definitely longer. You can actually sit down and go through it. And I think like my retention, I don't know about yourself, but when I watch a long video, I'm more focused on it. If I'm going through my phone, I couldn't tell you the last 5 reels that I've just seen. So it's like I get more value out of a long form. But I think nowadays it's just short forms everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
do you think lifestyle fits into that though? Because presumably, like, you're younger.
Yeah.
So you don't have a family. You have obviously a family in terms of mum and dad, but you don't have like kids or anything like that. You don't. Once you get home, obviously you play footy and whatever, but your time isn't that consumed by things outside of your control.
Yeah.
So would you say that would probably lend itself to longer form or the other way around?
I would probably say that it does, yeah. I mean, like, whenever you've got like 5 minutes on your phone, you're just literally there and you're scrolling away.
Yeah.
Where like you couldn't, it's like if you're out with your mates, people are still on the phone scrolling whilst you sat down and stuff. You couldn't sit there long form.
Yeah.
So I think that's why short form's so popular. It's because you can literally be anywhere in the world and you can just be scrolling away. And then you actually do get more knowledge from it, even though, like, if you're watching a long form video, you've probably either typed it in or it's on your like YouTube feed. So straight away you know what you're like going there for. But with short form, you've got so many different avenues of like different type of like knowledge and stuff like that. that you just probably consume more over time.
It's a good point.
I think it's kind of like a risk-free watch as well. No, like you ever like watch a film or a series and you start watching it and it's just shit. You get to the end of a film and you like just wasted 2 hours of me like watching a shit
Bad
film.
ending.
Whereas like a reel, if it's like going a bit shit and it's like short form, you just fucking swipe it and you're on the next one. Whereas like if you're like watching like something long form, even like YouTube, if you're like at home and you're on a couch, you're watching something YouTube, it's like 40-minute vlog or whatever. Like you like set yourself to watch it. Like you like go out your way through it. Like we spoke about like even like watching like the rugby, like you like shut your laptop, like get a beer or whatever, you watch the rugby. And it's like if it's a shit game, you can't at the end of it like fuck it out. Whereas like because you're just consuming and you can just like scroll through and stuff, you're essentially probably spending the same amount of time as you would watching like a film or watching a long like a long form vlog. But I think because it's so like risk free and you can just go, if you don't like it, you just carry on and carry on and carry on. It's like you don't feel like you're wasting as much time on it. I think you're just like you're not actually consuming it, you're just sort of going through and you're taking the bits that you like and you're just sort of like getting rid of the stuff that you don't like.
You're prepared to like watch like a longer video. You'll make your tea or something, you're sitting down, you've got something on.
You like invest in it a bit more, don't you, than you do short form.
It's that point, like that point is a really good point actually you just made about sort of, and this I guess for the listeners and watchers, this is kind of like a key point that we'll probably circle back to later. The reason that you would watch long form is probably more in line with you are looking for a specific thing. So whether it's something, it could be just out of enjoyment, or if you are looking to learn something, you'll be specifically searching for something along those lines. Whereas if you're consuming short form content, it probably is, like you said, you could be out, you could be around, you could just have 5 minutes spare, you could be in work, like whatever it is. So it's important to, I guess, identify when you think your content's going to be consumed. What type of lifestyle do your audience have? Which would lend itself to a certain side.
It's quite throwaway, isn't it? Like short form content's very throwaway. Where if you were investing a lot of your time and energy into just producing short form content over and over and over again, and not maybe reversing down long form, whatever you're doing, because it's so like easily like gamed. It's so you just throw it away. Like you were saying, like you probably can't remember the last 5 reels you watched on Instagram or your last 5 TikToks or whatever. But with your long form, generally it's like look at our stuff, for example. People generally will watch this, like listen to this, or be on the live, or they'll watch it back on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. And they do it because they're probably invested in the brand first, and then they're kind of watching it because you're putting it on. So like you'll watch pretty much anything with Ben Francis in, like it purely because you're like, well, I like him as a person, so I'm probably gonna like what it is. Whereas like the short form stuff's kind of reversed, where it's like they don't really know you, but because it's so short, there's no like risk of investment of time. So they like eventually build up to having that rapport with you. Whereas long form's kind of reversed back, where people watch it first because they actually like the brand, or they maybe don't really care about the topic or whatever. That probably comes afterwards. Whereas like you say with the reels, you've got to get people in like that to actually get them to the end of the video where you want them to do that thing. Say the long form stuff, I think it's a lot. You said it's a longer term game, and you're generally looking at people who are probably more interested in you as a person or as a brand, and then that comes with that.
So it's a different avenue, isn't it? What about yourself, Sam? Because obviously you're a similar age to Ryan, and like me and Liam are, and we've clearly got different opinions on what we consume. So what would you say?
Well, I'd say the simplest way for me to put it is just make it relatable for everyone watching, give a different angle to it. So me personally, I think I only really take value, long form wise, I take value from watching people I have an interest in. You know, people who've built an audience and me as their audience. There's a reason why I'm their audience, and that's because I'm interested in what they've built, and that's been tailored towards me. So, but obviously I don't think sometimes it's not like a versus thing, short form versus long form. I think you can use short form as a tool to build that audience,
to grab the attention,
which then once the long form, if you use the short form as a tool, then long form wise, if you can build an audience, people want to watch that. And that's why, like me, for example, I'll sit there for an hour or two, and watch someone who I have an interest in. You know, someone, and that might be someone I've had an interest in for 10 years. They might have had a past experience in a different field, and that's just how it is. But obviously you can still build a new audience and make people, as Ryan said, you might sit down, have your tea and watch someone. You become part of someone's routine. So I think it's good to have a balance of short form and long form. See your short form as a tool to then build the audience for a longer game, which is then when you make valuable long form content. 100%.
So I guess what you're explaining then is, to sort of like simplify it quickly, is you sort of using short form content to grab like a colder audience, to grab attention of people that are probably going to be interested in the topic you're talking about, or you as a person. And then obviously once they've consumed maybe a few pieces like that, which might be a scenario that you just talked about, scrolling through TikTok, scrolling through reels like you've just said, and then you come across something that, that's a bit of me, that's a bit of value. You look more into that brand or that person, and then you realize that there's actually a longer version of what you've just seen,
Yeah.
which could be a YouTube video, could be a podcast or whatever, and then that's where you are generating an audience.
That's where you really stamp yourself. Long form content, when you've generated that audience, is where you really stamp almost your legacy content wise. Your legacy content is not going to be your short form. Your legacy is going to be your long form videos and the value people take from it. But as I said, easiest way now is to make short form content that can then generate.
Like you said, your short form's like a volume.
Yeah,
game, isn't
yeah,
it?
100%.
Like you might put 100 reels out, one of them slaps, and then that's where if you do want to funnel them into long form and whatever you're selling or whatever, if you want to funnel them into long form, the buy-in generally is from short form. Like it's like the risk-free investment into you is that one video of 100 that absolutely slaps and you go, I want to see more of that person, and then you go to YouTube or whatever.
Obviously, as long as your content's good, your short form content, as long as it's not shit, you know what I mean? As long as like as long as it's good content and everything's got a valuable takeaway, as you said, one point that's really valuable, and then a call to action. As you said, if it's got one valuable point, it's not a waste. As you said, you can make, as you said, it's a volume game with short form. You can make plenty of videos like that, and it's got and that'll just pack out really nice. And then, as you said, then you can move on to the long form and build something people care about. So
then, if we relate it, then just quickly, if we relate that back specifically to the fitness industry, because we know for a fact that a lot of fitness business owners will be focusing a lot on short form content, so reels, TikToks, YouTube shorts, things like that. What does that have to say about people that are focusing on short form content but don't necessarily have the wider, I guess, ecosystem of long form content? So once they've grabbed someone's attention through a reel or whatever it is, and they don't have like longer form content in the back end for them to then go and find and consume more of it, what's the downside of that?
I don't think this is such a downside. If you don't want to do long form video, you don't want to do long form video. It's not the end of the world. Like if you look at, you're saying it's a long term game. You're trying to monetize it. It's a bit of a graft. Like there's a lot of like podcasts. Like we're not looking to fucking go to the moon with the podcast. It's just something we like doing. But some people will want to make a name off the podcast. They want to fucking make some famous friends. Want to make a bit of money or whatever. A lot of people don't want to do that, and a lot of people don't want to do long form videos. They couldn't think of anything worse than sitting down and filming a podcast or taking the fucking video camera to Aldi with them while they do a shop and shit like that. But people don't want to do that. So I think as long as you've got something that you want to, you're essentially looking to monetize it, aren't you? You want to funnel someone somewhere. If you're putting short form content out, people are consuming it, people like it, it's getting engagement. You're kind of like warming them up towards something, unless you just get hard on off views. Like if you want to just get views on your video or engagement, great. But if you want to actually monetize it, if it's something that you're selling, if it's a service that you've got, anything at all, there's got to be something that comes off the back of it. It might be long form video, but if it's not, then there's just going to be something off the back of it.
See, I would say I disagree with that.
In the sense of what?
I honestly believe that if you're running an online business in the current day, you're massively losing out if you're not trying to create long form
I'm not
content.
saying that you're missing out, but I'm saying that a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that.
Yeah,
Don't want to do
well, yeah, you can't argue with that.
But if you don't want to do it, like you said, you might be missing out. But there's got to be something off the back of it that you're trying to pull people into, because you're getting all these followers, views, engagement, whatever, and it essentially stands for fuck all, doesn't it? Unless you're actually doing with it, unless all you want to do is just you just want like views or whatever. You just got this like vanity metric thing of that's what you want. Absolutely fine, that's great. But like you say, if you don't want to do long form, like you say, there may be an element that you are missing out. But I think as long as you're actually doing something with that engagement from a short form standpoint, then obviously
which could be like, well, obviously we're not going to go into it in this episode, but which could be just really clear messaging, clear landing pages, really clear website, something that would replace a longer form video that would give them the information that they need, basically, isn't it?
100%.
So there are other things. So like you said, like I do disagree. I do believe that if you listen to this and you're in the fitness industry, you should be looking to do long form content. But if you don't want to do it, because you might not want to do it for whatever reason, then you just need to make sure that if you are grabbing people's attention with short form content, that there is somewhere for them to go after to consume more.
I think that's why like YouTube has withstood like so many years, because it is like the long, like where you're going to watch long form content, if it's not Netflix or if it's not Apple TV or like a system like that, like it's YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of like TikTokers now and like people that make like Instagram reels and stuff, they start off on that, like you said, get your audience in, and then the way they monetize it better is just doing it through YouTube.
Yeah. And things like Kick. Yeah. Now people are streaming through Kick.
The deals that the people are getting on Kick,
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Twitch deals as well.
Twitch,
it's mad.
But again, like what you've just explained is that exact scenario that we've if we can summarize it now and move on, is basically if you are grabbing attention with short form content, you need to make sure that there's something on the back end that's longer, that gives them more information, that gives them a direction of how to spend money with you or commit to you in a longer term, whatever that is, by subscribing or something.
To you or whatever.
Just make sure you have that, or else you can base off the vanity metrics like likes and views and things like that, but in reality it's real short term game.
And I think because of how so fickle social media is, and like the fitness industry, for example, you're really hot while you're hot, but when you're not, like you've kind of like fluffed it a little bit. So if you're like doing really well, you're getting a lot of engagement, a lot of traffic to your page, like there's going to come a point where that's probably not going to be there forever. Like it's never going to be a complete upward trend. There's going to be times where it gets a bit shit. People get into panic mode, start to post more content, do a post new content, do a try a different style, do a mimic such and such who's doing well. So I think while it's warm, like make the most of it essentially, and don't just like ride off this thing of like, oh, I'm getting these views, because one day something changes, the algorithm changes, what people are consuming changes. Like when we started Graphfit, it was like still images, carousel, stuff like that. It's video now, but that's not to say it's going to be video in the next 2 to 3 years. It doesn't mean much. So I think while it's there, you're probably best utilising it, and like we've said, just funneling people somewhere, whether that is long form video or whether that's into somewhere that you essentially can leverage them.
Well, it is like that short term game that we talk about of short form content is like if you think of anybody, like I'm sure you will. I've been spending a lot of time on TikTok lately, so I've become to know the personalities that are on there. And there's obviously the term of falling off, like is used quite a lot, isn't it? Like, and that is literally exactly what you've just said. It's that instant gratification of getting views, which in platforms like TikTok, large amount of views translate to money at some level. And then they are literally just trying to squeeze as much out of it as quickly as possible, because they know that something's going to change, and because they haven't converted them views into fans or a community or a service, that they could literally just disappear tomorrow.
It's just something that they're known for.
I'm gonna use a completely different example here. I'm gonna go at it from a reality TV angle about, as you said, about falling off. So when it comes to content now, because of how, as you said, how much it changes, the key thing is literally adaptability. So let's use Love Island for an example. You got people coming off like Love Island, creating content, etc. You'll see that a lot of people might go into the fitness industry, which might be probably the most where the outcome, like avenue for them to go down. But you'll know people in the industry now and through social media who've adapted through the years, for example, and coming off these shows or maybe whatever. So your situation doesn't matter. Like people have come into social media through different avenues. People will end up having like these moments where you've got to adapt to what the new thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then as you said, that's where you get the fall off culture. So it's about how you can adapt your content to obviously no one's saying like everyone's going to fall off, for example, but it just shows that you need to adapt your content to what is doing well at the minute.
Well, it's buy-in, isn't it?
Well, exactly. You've got to have you've got to have a quality that is interesting, and that's why a lot of people can't seem to get their head around getting.
But that's again where you've got like the two different sides of that coin. So you've got people who come out of like reality TV, people like look at like Molly May, for example, pay a shitload of money, like all sorts of endorsements and that. You get other people who are doing fucking meet and greets in a pub in Wigan, and they're probably getting 50 quid in the drinks all night. Like but there's a completely different side of the coin there, where someone has got either the acumen themselves to be able to leverage it, or they've got a team in place, or whatever that is. But while they're hot, they've essentially leveraged it, and someone else has come out and just either tried to do it themselves, or they've gone to do the wrong thing. They've gone for vanity things like going to the hometown and going to a bar, and obviously everyone's screaming at them, but they're all fucking people that they didn't even like in school or whatever. So there's that two sides of the coin where one of them's done it right and one of them's done it really wrong. And they've kind of they've both been trying to ride that wave, but they've just not. They've done it in two completely different fashions.
So if we sort of bring that back down to sort of industry specific, because obviously we just clearly give our opinions on it, each individual opinion on the pros and cons of each and what we consume, and hopefully you can, even though we've gone off on a couple of tangents there, I think
you linked back on it really well.
Yeah, you can probably get an idea that everybody has a different opinion and everybody likes to consume different types of content. So like what we'll work towards now is how we squeeze the most out of content in terms of repurposing content and things like that. But just before we get to that, I just want to go through 2 steps. I want to, for anyone that's listening or watching, I want to give them a bit of an opinion / checklist on both short and long form content, what we would suggest that needs to be made up of. So if they're going to create short form content now, what boxes does it need to tick? If they're going to create long form content, what boxes does it need to tick? And then we'll move on then onto sort of like, I guess, a final piece of how to wrap it up. So first of all, we'll go to you, Ryan. When it comes to short form content, obviously when, like, for example, you come, and even in your interview, which me and Liam still laugh about now, even in your interview, you had obviously consumed some of our content.
Yeah.
And you was giving us our advice straight away on how our sort of clips, YouTube shorts, TikToks, reels and things need to grab attention quicker. So if you was to propose like a 5-stage checklist now of what a short form piece of content needs to look like, what would it be?
I think if you're doing a 5-stage, like the main one and the first one straight at the start of the video needs to be the hook. Like if your hook isn't grabbing their attention within 3 seconds, they're already skipping on to the next 2 or 3 videos.
Yeah.
So the hook's probably the most important thing. I think using like keywords like you, or if you're going like through it saying like mine, stuff like that, like that's really important. Secondly, I'd say like just trying to get your like main points across as soon as you can, really. Like if you're beating around the bush and waffling, no one's gonna stick around. Like what value you giving to your viewer, you need to relate to them. Like if you set up your camera and speak, if you pretend in your head that you're speaking to someone directly instead of like a whole community, then that's where you're gonna get the most kind of knowledge from it. I'm just trying to think of some other things.
Well, you've got you sort of at the point there where you've grabbed their attention.
Yeah.
You then give them value. So I guess like what are you trying to do after that?
I think once you've got the value, then if you're trying to like push something or sell something, that's when you need to do it right in the middle of the video. And then very quickly at the end of the video, it's checking out my other page, checking over my videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, follow along or link in bio, whatever it is. Yeah.
Let them lead them onto something. If you're just ending the video as "I'll see you later," no one's ever going to go onto your page and binge watch a few of your videos.
Yeah.
Like you've got to lead them onto something.
You are kind of leading down a path with fuck all at the end of that, and you're doing that work. Like you say, you've got to do something. I think with short form, it's kind of in a weird way, it's kind of getting them like in and out the video as quick as possible in like the most efficient way possible, getting your message across. And then at the end of it, while they're still consuming it, you like do this, like follow for more tips, or keep an eye on my page, or hit the link in the bio and watch me latest vlog or whatever that might be. You've kind of got to get them in and out of that sort of thing as quickly and efficiently as possible.
What you were saying then about like the previous point that we were on about is if you're building your community, you want them to stick around for you.
Yeah.
Not what you're saying. Like they need to trust you, follow what you're saying, and then that's where you're going to build a fan base and an actual community that people are gonna this guy's posted, I'm going to share it straight away.
You're gonna make an effort, aren't you?
Yeah,
It's just
valuable
a coincidence that they fall upon it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, like I said, a five step, but you kind of done it in 3. So there's a point to that, isn't there? Like it's pretty simple. Obviously, you can go into, I guess, more detail of short form content, like not making it too busy. Like we see a lot of animation around these days, which depend on who you are. Again, it does relate back to your personality a little bit and whether you can get away and push the boundaries of how far you take reels and stuff. But I think just starting really simple has got to be the way forward. I think start really simple. If you use like the 3 steps that Ryan's just said, start really simple, keep your captions simple, don't bother too much with like too much animation. And then when you sort of set that baseline and you figure out, right, okay, I've had some feedback off this. That's the benefit of short form content. You almost get immediate feedback. So you get the feedback, you then refine from there. So that might be, okay, the video needs to be a little bit longer. The video needs to be a little bit shorter. The captions aren't really doing its job. I need to grab attention earlier. I want to add some illustration around what I'm saying. Okay, add a little bit of animation. Or my call to action wasn't enough at the end. Let's make a big song and dance about it. Like you can really start simple and go from there.
Yeah, I think with video, we've said over the years where like you end up forgetting who you're posting for. So we used to see with like design stuff that people would do, and it's so busy, and they're kind of like you're designing it like for a graphic designer. So you're like designing it, and me and you go, oh, that's cool, isn't it? But the person who's consuming the content that you actually want to buy, they don't like that. They don't like how busy it is. And like same with video again, like if a video editor goes, that's really cool, it might be all right, but that might be like, fucking hell, that's a very busy edit, that but like Sharon, 45, got 3 kids, wants to fucking lose a little bit of fat before the holiday. She don't care about all these things popping up. She basically just wants you to get to the point as quick as possible. She wants to consume it, take some value from it, and that's like how you build it. She's not going, I want to sign up with that person because they've got this fucking piece of paper unravel on the page and like show something. Like she doesn't really care, and there's a time and a place for it, obviously. But I do think it gets to a point where people are like over engineering things to a point where they're just trying to impress the wrong people, and they're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. And as I said, there's a time and a place for everything, but it's probably not all the time.
What about timing? What about the length of videos, specifically around short form? Because I actually, to start off with, I'm sort of setting you up here really, because I don't believe there's an answer. I don't like, obviously you hear a lot like they need to be short, they need to be longer, but different platforms demand different things, don't they? So what would you say from a consumer's standpoint, if you was consuming content, what would be your ideal like sort of?
I was gonna say from like an actual content creation side first. Sorry to spin the question a bit here, but on the content creation side, as well, as I said, there's different platforms like based on your audience. I don't know if people are aware, but on TikTok, I believe it's when you get to a minute mark, you get paid after that. So let's just use that as an example. There's loads of little things when it comes to content creation you have to look at, not just about engagement, but there's little things platform by platform.
Yeah, per platform.
But consuming wise, for me, content wise, I'd say if I was on a short form video, I'd say I don't think it's the time for me. It's, as you said, if the hook's good, then I think the time for me extends on what I like. I think once the hook's good, I think the time for me can then extend for whatever. I don't care. I'm really bad for it. I like, if there's not something that grabs me in, I'm gone. Like, I'm just gone.
It's kind of like a checkpoint, isn't it? Like the racing games you'd play when you were a kid.
Yeah,
like, you get to the next checkpoint and you buy yourself 10 seconds. The hook is like your initial, you get like, you've got 5 seconds to get near there, and if you've not got me in, I'm gone.
I'm gone.
And it's like you get to that and you're like, right, you just bought yourself another 10 seconds, and then you don't get to it, you're gone again. And it's like that. It's kind of like that chunky thing.
I'd say like sometimes people as well stress a bit too much about getting past, like, let's say for example, let's use the minute as a benchmark. Like, if you know, as you said, it's about a process. If you've got the stages already and it only goes to 40 seconds, that could be more valuable than you doing 1 minute 30 of something with the same stages, but might not just, as you said, it's about you can take it all off depending topic by topic on what it is. So if I find something really interesting, I might love a video and I'm like, that was only 30 seconds long. Like, I'll use, for example, like videos I see on the internet. I don't think really short form wise, I see many videos past a minute anyway. You know, especially on like Instagram, etc. They're going to be less than a minute. They're going to be in the 30 to 40 second ballpark, aren't they, really? I'd say that for me is like what I prefer to watch. Although, unless it's someone, as I said, that has built me as an audience, and then I'm like, maybe I'll watch later. But
Going back to what we said before, like you sort of like you create your own destiny, aren't you? So if you, I guess, like the earlier points that you made of sort of, I guess, a bit of a checklist of short form content, the better you are at that, the longer you can keep a viewer for. And then that then is where it comes into the point we made at the start of then pushing them into something else and so on.
But then, as I said though as well, it's also worth researching and understanding on a content creation side what the best optimal time is to create. Because I don't want to be quoted on it, but as I said about TikTok, you got that minute mark or whatever.
I think it is. I
Is
think
it
it's
a minute and you get paid if you want to create a fund or
for the creator fund.
just
like
as an example, if someone's got an audience out there and is thinking obviously of repurposing on TikTok and stuff, and if you got and you know, you may as well be on the creator fund if you repurpose on TikTok.
I mean, it depends what your goals are, doesn't it? I think.
Oh, of course,
I think, but that's where the goalposts change a little bit per platform. Like on TikTok, like to begin with, I believe it needs to be over a minute to be on to get the creative funding to start making money of it. But not everyone wants to make money off the content. So but then once you start making money of it, like the big personalities, I believe then it's more like 15 seconds. So the goalposts do change. So I guess that's going to thread through the whole conversation here. Really, it is very subjective. Like, you're not going to get black and white answers, but if as long as you relate everything back to the content that you want to create, that you would lend yourself to the best, what your audience wants to consume and what platform it's on. I guess if you can stick to those three things and create content that you enjoy, then you're probably on the right track, isn't it?
Yes. From a monetization standpoint as well, obviously if you're gearing up towards 1 minute videos to get paid by TikTok or whatever it is, you kind of like, well, you're chasing that, which is probably very unlikely to get. Like, if you look at it from a percentage standpoint, like, it's probably not going to happen. But then you're looking at you sacrificing the people who would buy the video for 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So you're sacrificing those people to try and chase this bigger fish of like, oh, let's get monetized by TikTok and let's get some backing from social media. Whereas like the people who were consuming your content, who are actually ready to buy from you, they don't want to watch it for a minute. They want to just get in and out in 15 seconds. So it's kind of, it is playing to your audience rather than playing to like this different rule that you think.
As you said as well, just to go back onto it, it's case by case. So I'm going to use our example of, let's use the clients that we work with. the clients we work with, let's be honest, aren't going to be really that bothered about going on TikTok and getting into a creative fund. Do you know what I mean? As I said, it's just an overall view of the entire aspect of everyone creating content on the internet. But to go back more to the fitness industry and the people who will be watching this and who we work with very closely, to be honest, as you said, that if you've got a valuable video, it doesn't have to be a long video, it just has to be 20, 30 seconds max of really good content, as you said, hook, valuable information, call to action, and then point them to some more valuable content of yours. Bang. That easy, and it's
that's pretty much the
for what we do anyway, for the people we're around.
That's pretty much the summary of everything.
Yeah, literally.
Really. So let's flip it on its head. Let's go to long form. Obviously, we're in a piece of long form content now, so we've been, I guess, doing a lot of testing and figuring out the way we want to do long form, which is why I wanted to include it as well. So, just to start off with, like, I'll give my opinion on this. I think, obviously, if you look at it as a formula, which is the easiest way to do it, obviously we explained before about grabbing attention with short form, linking them into something. It could be long form content, like something like this for more value, or it could just simply be an inquiry, an application form, a quiz, whatever it is. But it's important to realize that it's a different type of content. So, for example, we're very conversational. Mm-hmm. We do a long form piece of content like this that will be an hour long, and then we'll cut it down into clips. But them clips aren't very direct.
No.
So again, you've got to go back to short form content and think, right, if I'm going to do long form content and I'm going to clip it down, what is actually going to get me in front of the audience and get them to stay? So there are a few variables in it, but like I said earlier, I genuinely believe that if you are running an online business these days, you should be aiming to do some kind of long form content. My general opinion on it is that I think you should think about it a little bit differently. I think if we said to most of the fitness industry now, you need to start creating long form content, they'll go podcast straight away. And albeit like we're on one now and we've got the other podcast as well, that is one option and it's the primary option. But there are other ways of doing long form content. It could be, for example, if you're looking to get more personality out there or more lifestyle out there, then obviously something that might be a long form vlog, showing day in the life or something. It honestly could be anything that is over 5 or 10 minutes, basically. But I think you should be looking at it a little bit differently. So instead of looking, if you do want to do a podcast, instead of looking at it and going, I want to do a podcast, look at it as, like we've done before, look at it as a concept. Build a concept around you and your audience that is going to be almost like a TV show for them to consume. Yeah. So as an example, if you look at our 2 long form content, we've got the Graphfit podcast, which is guest based. So we have guests on, it's longer. Again, it's going to be around an hour or something like that. And then that will be the visuals a little bit different. It's a little bit more direct. It's questions, it's experiences. Whereas you then look at the Friday show that we're sat on now, they're both essentially podcasts, but the concepts are completely different. They're going to attract different types of people. So for example, the Friday show now, you can see that we're in a little bit more of a laid back environment. The mics kind of do a job for us. The fact that it's a Friday, we're having a beer. We've sort of leaned into what people sort of know us for as people, as individuals, as a culture. So we use that to find other people like that. And then the content's a little bit different. So there's a hell of a lot of educational value in these videos versus the other podcast, which is just experience, guest experience, Q&A based. Yeah. So they're just a few examples of how you should be able to build a show, a concept around what your audience wants. And then you can do that through different visuals, through branding. Like, for example, the Friday show, like that, it looks completely different to the Graphfit podcast. And that's the way I would go about it personally. I think there's that many podcasts around now. You need to find a way to be able to differentiate you from a podcast.
Can I just quickly elaborate on that as well? Well, not elaborate, but can I just quickly build on that? So the whole time when you were saying that, I was just thinking about me growing up through, let's say, YouTube, and thinking about all the stuff that I remember of people that have built things. And it made me realise that everything that you look back on and you say to someone like me and Ryan on the same age, I might end up going off on a tangent a little bit here, but if I said to you the stuff that we remember from the stuff that we enjoy and take value from, it's always a series that has been built by someone. So maybe even if you're a coach making like a challenge of, it's like almost, as you said, a series of challenge. Like, for example, when we think about growing up watching content, I think KSI Road to Division 1. You know what I mean?
Well, if you look at currently now, the things that have been around longer, you've got like Impulsive. So the Sidemen the Sidemen's job is to create content.
Yeah, it's the stuff you remember.
The whole thing now, the Sidemen is like every Sunday. and that is like
Yeah,
at the end of the
what you
day,
watch.
that's a series, isn't
Yeah.
it?
It's like, yeah.
It could be on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Every Sunday, you're tuning in. That's what you're getting.
Yeah.
Like videos might be different a lot, but that's
Yeah.
like
So it's
That's
creating a show, the piece of long form content, but it's a show. It lends itself to a particular personality, a particular type of person, particular age group, someone who's grown up in a certain scenario,
exactly.
and that's
Yeah,
what it is.
it's
But
something
and that is short form, long form content. But I guess if you link the two together, like you said, you've got to link them to through short form. You've got to link them into something of more value, and that's essentially what we do. So we obviously do the long form. We do podcast. We do Friday show. We then use that longer piece of content to cut down and then get our short form content out of it. And that's how we, I guess, get the most out of it. But yeah, I mean, for me, the long form is the biggest piece.
It's the
isn't
stuff you remember, as I said, the way me and Ryan clicked on what we were on about then. It's the stuff you remember, and that's, as I said, that's why it's engaging and that's why it's so valuable.
Yeah.
Because if you can build a series that you enjoy and you can show you enjoy that through, I think you can't act inspired, but you can be it. So when someone watches a series and it's memorable and like that long form content is just really good, and that's when people are like, you can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So that's why straight away you're like, yeah, that, and you're like, that's what you remember. You don't remember the short form stuff, as you said. You remember the long form.
Yeah, the bit
stuff.
that brought you in. You just remember the stuff that
You
you're there
remember
for.
the stuff that you're there. Yeah.
even short form now, like if you're gonna relate to both, with the series thing, a lot of short form creators do better when they've got a series going on. Like just trying to take an example, like I'll be going through my feed and you'll see someone like saying, I don't know, like they're doing like a walk around the world or whatever. I know that's a bit extreme, but every single day they're posting, and you know that it is, at the end of it, it's going to be a series. Like you'll look back at it and be like, oh, do you remember when this happened? Yeah. And the series format just works so well because, like I said, you can just relate so much more to your viewer, and people can tune in and they know what they're going to get.
Yeah. So what's the answer then? So we're trying to give a load of opinions and like sort of like rivalry opinions between us. So what's the answer?
Stop going in Aldi and filming yourself doing it. No one cares what you like.
I was waiting for you to bring that up.
Are people even buying the food, or are you just putting it back on the shelf after they've fucked around with it?
Put it in the fridge and then goes out of date.
Yeah, just go. Yeah, I can't afford that one. I'm putting it back.
Yeah, but that's. I guess the point is that that there is no right or wrong. I think if we can give our advice and our opinion like straight down the line now, it is to do both. It's to do short form. It's to do long form. If you are doing short form content, then make sure things like the styling of it, topics of it, the hook of it, the length of it lend itself to your audience. That's how much time they got. That's how much their attention span. And use the short form content to grab attention, to pull them back to something else, whether that is then a podcast, whether that is then some kind of interactive thing. It could be a website inquiry, call, whatever it is, something that gives them more value. And then if you are going to create long form content at the back end, then obviously think bigger, think more than I'm going to do a podcast and I'm going to call it the Liam podcast. It's like, well, who's Liam? Like that is never going to get in front of people. So make sure that you're giving value. Think more of concept based. Think more, okay, if this was a show, what's going to get people to buy in? What's going to get people watching episode 1, but not only episode 1, they're going to tune in for 2, 3, and 4. And then repurpose. Yeah. So then when you do have the long form content, the long form piece, which let's be honest, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort and planning, then make the most of the content, work backwards from there. We've talked about grabbing attention with short form and then pushing to long form. What about if you're doing long form and pushing to short form? Yeah. So if you're going to sit there and record content for an hour and then edit it or pay to get it edited or whatever, like we're doing now, then clip it down, take some value out of it, get it onto the social media platforms and test.
Yeah, I think if you are doing long form as well, you've got to be prepared for like the long term game. Like you said, like if you put your first podcast out and it gets fucking 7 views, it is what it is. Like you don't just can it because you've got that. Like you obviously your short form stuff is like instant gratification. Like you can tell whether your short form's done really well straight away or it's done really badly straight away. Just you give it an hour, like you can generally gauge what's going on. Podcast, like if everyone who run the podcast or started like publishing a podcast give up after the first. Like, because they've not hit 100 views within the first 4 episodes, there'd probably be no podcasts out there. Yeah. So you've just got to start off, and one of the biggest things as well is like, stop just posting podcasts week by week. Because like there'll be one week where you do not want to film a podcast and you fall off the wagon and you fucked it. So just get a bank of stuff up together, get a few episodes filmed, get people primed, like look at your network of who you can get on, and actually get like a bit of a backlog of content together rather than just going week by week and posting, because as I say, eventually you will run out of it and it just kind of looks a bit stupid.
Yeah, then it comes out to the consistency.
Yeah.
There's obviously, I mean, you could go on forever now. We're going to close up now, but I think you could go on forever. We've sort of gone War and Peace, really. Like, I think when you get a conversation like this, it's been quite irate, and I think it's been irate because
I'm in a mood.
Liam's in a mood. We consume it every day, so we know what we like and what we don't like. And it's very different person by person. So if you are confused, and hopefully this has helped a little bit. But if you are confused, I would just say don't worry about it. No. There is no right or wrong. Like, you're not going to fail the test.
Exactly. Yeah.
So get content out there, figure out what your audience wants and what you like doing, and together, like, you won't be far wrong. If you don't get any instant gratification from long form content, just think of how long it's going to be on the internet for.
Yeah.
If you don't get instant gratification from short form content, you probably should, which means that you should probably need to refine it a little bit more. Think about the things that Ryan said. It could be your hook, it could be the styling, it could be the topic, it could be the length of the video, it could be the platform that it's on. Just really sort of get down into the nitty gritty of why people aren't watching it. And in the end, you'll come good. And then before you know it, you're telling someone else how to do it, or showing someone else how to do it.
And literally, as you said, just come across inspired. Not just come across inspired, but be inspired. If you're inspired in the stuff you're doing, it comes across so well to your audience. And that's the main thing, as you said, just to round it off as well. You can spend all the time in the world thinking about all the different ways you can present your content, but if you're not like present in
if you're
your
not
content,
bought into it,
you know what I mean? It's got to come across inspired, and as I said, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
But there's certain techniques you can use, which is what we've covered.
Yeah.
I know you've said it on previous podcasts as well, but it's like the best thing that you can do, whether you're making short form content or long form content, is just being honest. Like, if you can sit down in front of the camera and not basically bullshit the viewer, you're gonna see results. Whatever you're doing.
Especially with short form as well. Like, if you genuinely believe what you're saying and you actually understand the concept that you're talking about, you can reel short form off.
Yeah.
If like someone's got a script in front of you and you're saying something that you either don't believe, you don't know enough about it, or like there's generally no conviction behind it, you'll struggle to get it across because you just can't articulate what you're trying to say. But as I say, if long form we do it conversationally, it comes out quite well. But from a short form standpoint, you've got to genuinely speak about things that you've got a vested interest into. Otherwise, you are going to fumble your words. It can take about 30 takes.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll close up there. If you are watching, if you are listening, and you've lasted this long, we do have the forfeit for Liam coming up. So we're going to choose him a nice beverage out the fridge. He's going to down it. But if you are watching, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. It's the first time I've ever actually asked, but other people do it. So
I may as well.
And if obviously you are on TikTok, if you're on, again, assuming YouTube Shorts, make sure you go and watch the longer one. And if you're on Reels, then make sure you give us some feedback. If you think it's shit, tell us it's shit and we'll make it better. If you think it's shit and you're a knobhead, we'll probably ignore you. If you think it's good, then please tell us it's good. But yeah, I mean, we're refining these episodes month by month as we're going. And hopefully there's enough value in it. Hopefully you can get a bit of a better feel of who we are. And that's essentially the aim of this whole show. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, fucking bad drink it. Really bad this. How long till live?
Does he have a time limit for it?
Just get that.
Do have another one?
3, 2, 1, go. I thought you were even drinking.
Go on, mate.
Oh, brilliant. You got it down?
There you go. Oh, no, go on. He's close. It's tough task, isn't it?
A bit of spillage, like, you know.
There we go. That'll do us.
It's too fizzy.